Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining. This afternoon, we have Saswati Das, who's a student with Dr. Scott Bailey, and we'll hear about some things I think also relating to chemistry and some things in the upper atmosphere. It seems really interesting about the different layers of the atmosphere that we might be learning today. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Saswati. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Kevin. Hi, everyone. I'm Shashwati. I'm a doctoral student working with Dr. Bailey. The topic of my talk today is analysis of the impacts of SSW-triggered events on the chemistry and dynamics of the MLTS using SOFI observations. Before I start my talk, I want to take a minute to thank my advisor, Dr. Bailey, and Dr. Brenta Thurairaja for their guidance throughout my research. So the primary instrument that I use in my research is the SOFI instrument, which is on board the AIM satellite. So I want to take a few minutes to talk about what the AIM satellite is and what it does. So the AIM is basically a mini satellite mission, and its basic objective is to study the causes of the polar mesospheric clouds and why they occur. And we have three different instruments that are on board AIM. The first one is CIPS. The basic objective of CIPS is cloud imagery and to study why and when PMCs are formed. The other is the cosmic dust experiment, which basically measures the influx of dust particles into the upper atmosphere. And in the end, we have SOFI, which is our main instrument, which is the solar occultation for ice experiment. And it measures temperature, pressure, carbon dioxide, methane, nitric oxide, and other such instruments, species. And this image here is an artist's rendition of the AIM spacecraft. So taking a little more detailed look at the SOFI instrument, image 2 is basically a schematic view of what SOFI instrument looks like. And image 3 here is the actual image of the SOFI instrument. So SOFI basically uses satellite solar occultation to make its measurements in both the northern and the southern hemisphere. And it measures between 65 degrees and 85 degrees in both of these hemispheres with a field of view of approximately 1.6 kilometers. And for our analysis, we use the most latest processed data of SOFI, which is level 2 version 1.3 SOFI, measurements in the northern hemisphere of temperature, nitric oxide, water, ozone, and methane. Also, to validate our observations and to bolster our measurements, we have comparisons with other instruments as well. So the first instrument that we use for comparison is SABRE, that's on board the timed spacecraft. Here, image 4, this is basically an artist's rendition of what the timed spacecraft looks like. And image 5 is what the SABRE instrument looks like. So the basic aim of the SABRE instrument is to gather data and to diagnose the chemistry and dynamics of the transport in the MLT region. And the vertical field of view is approximately 2 kilometers. Unlike SOFI, which makes sunrise and sunset measurements, SABRE makes day and night measurements. So for our comparison, we take out the daytime measurements and compare it to our SOFI observations. And it measures the volume mixing ratios for ozone, carbon dioxide, water, etc. And the latitude within which it operates is 83 degrees south to 83 degrees north. The second instrument that we look at is MIPAS for comparison. Image 6 is an artist's rendition of NBSAT, which is the spacecraft on which MIPAS is present. And image 7 is an illustration of the MIPAS instrument. And MIPAS was decommissioned in 2012, so we only have observations until May 2012. It basically measures temperature and pressure as a first step, followed by measurements of the mixing ratio of ozone, water, methane, nitrous oxide, etc. It has a field of view between 4 to 8 kilometers. And just like SABRE, it makes day and night measurements. The last instrument that we compared our results to is ACE, which is on board the Canadian SciSat mission. This is an artist's rendition of what the SciSat spacecraft looks like. And this is a view, the real-time image of the ACE instrument. The primary aim of ACE is to understand the atmospheric chemistry with that of climate change. And it makes measurements of the volume mixing ratios of water, ozone, nitrous oxide, carbon monoxide, etc. It has a field of view of 3 to 4 kilometers. And just like SOFI, it makes sunset and sunrise measurements, which makes it a very good candidate for comparison to our SOFI results. So the main research that I work on involves sudden stratospheric warming at its heart. So before I go in deeper, I want to quickly take a minute to talk about what sudden stratospheric warming events are. So as name suggests, sudden stratospheric warming basically means that the stratosphere warms up, and it warms up very rapidly. And apart from a rise in temperature, there's also a reversal in the zonal wind. When we look at this image here, we can see that the polar night jet is moved from west to east, and in a few days' time, it turns from east to west. And sudden stratospheric warmings can be categorized as major or minor. So a major sudden stratospheric warming is usually marked by westerly winds at 60 degrees north and at 10 HPA reversing, and a complete disruption in the polar vortex is observed in two ways. Either the vortex splits into two daughter vortices, or it is displaced from its usual position. This is usually a feature in the northern hemisphere, and it is not experienced so much in the southern hemisphere. So starting with our discussion of the main science part that I have, this is the zonal mean zonal wind reversal plot. This is vacuum data. For my ozone analysis, I will be talking about 5 years specifically. These years are 2009 to 2013. The reason I picked these years is because it has a combination of anomalous as well as non-anomalous years. And how do we differentiate between them? I'll just come to that in a bit. So where I'm hovering my cursor in this particular region for 2009, I'm basically looking at a zonal wind reversal. The data that I have is from the beginning of December to the end of April, and for every year that I have taken in consideration. And this region here, as we can see, the wind value, the value of wind is actually, the zonal wind is around 40 here. It turns into 0, and then it reverses to a negative value. Similar is the case for 2010. We can see it here in this particular region, not as strong as 2009, but it still reverses in some capacity. Similar is the case for 2012, and a very strong such behavior is seen in 2013 as well. We do not see such behavior in 2011. As we can see, there is no reversal in the wind direction. This basically means that years 2009, 10, 12, and 13 are anomalous years because they behave differently from the usual behavior. And 2011 is a regular year which has not experienced a significant SSW event. The other way to categorize an SSW event is by the temperature measurements. We can see there are 5 different years with the time series of temperature measurements here. At the beginning of the year for 2009, we see that the stratopause slowly goes down, and within a few days' time, it elevates to a height much more than its usual climatological height. Similar is the case for 2010. It is not as strongly evident in 2010 as for 2009, but it is still present. In 2011, we see that the stratopause is much more stable without any breakage. In 2012, again, there is an elevation to a height higher than its usual climatological height. Same is the case for 2013. But in 2009 and in 2013, we see that the elevation is much more, and it happens more rapidly, denoting the fact that 2009 and 2013 are years with very strong SSW events. So before I move on to our ozone analysis from SOFI, I want to take a second to talk about secondary ozone maximum and what it is. So the maximum in ozone concentration that is found in the MLT region is known as a secondary ozone maximum. This is an analysis from Dr. Smith's paper from 2009. These are basically nighttime measurements. SOFI basically works on daytime measurements, but this is just to explain what secondary ozone maximum is. These are her observations from SABRE data, and this is from 2002 to 2009. Here I'm hovering my cursor over year 2006. We can see that in the beginning of the year, from around day 1 to day 30 or so, the concentration of ozone is quite high. Same is the case for 2009, but with time, gradually the concentration of ozone tends to decrease. This coincides with the time when the stratopause goes back to its normal climatological height. And these are our plots for our SOFI ozone analysis from years 2009 to 2013. And as we can see for 2009, the concentration of ozone in its daytime, during the daytime is very high at this particular region where I'm hovering my cursor. Same is the case for 2010, 2012, and 2013. Going back to 2009, let us mark that the days from 30 to around 60 of the year, the concentration of ozone is very high. Let's go back a little to our temperature plot and see that during this time, the stratopause has an elevation because of which there is mesospheric cooling, which means that a cool temperature is very ambient for the production of ozone. And gradually, when the stratopause comes back to its normal climatological height, the concentration of ozone tends to decrease, which is visible in all years except 2011. We can see that the concentration of ozone is very evenly distributed without any sudden or violent increase or decrease in concentration. And this also is an agreement with the fact that there is no elevation in stratopause here. This is our multi-instrument ozone comparison with the instruments that I mentioned before. SABRE and MIPAS make day and nighttime measurements. So we just use their daytime measurements to compare with SOFI. And much like SOFI, ACE also measures at sunrise and sunset. Since MIPAS was decommissioned in 2012, we don't have its data for comparison. If we look at these plots for all the 5 years, we see that there is a consistency in the minima at 80 kilometers, and the maxima occurs between 85 and 95 kilometers in all these years. So they are basically in qualitative agreement with each other at their maxima and minima. And we also see that the measurements made by SABRE, which is the red plot, is consistently high in every year. To explain this in a little more detail, here are plots for the ozone absolute and relative, that is percentage differences. This plot here, the science figure 6 here, is the absolute difference in ppmv. And as we can see, that consistently SABRE measurements are higher, especially in the latitude range of around 70 to 80 kilometers. And similarly, the same result has been plotted in relative difference. And it can also be seen here that SABRE measurements are consistently higher for all years. Another interesting analysis that can be done with the help of ozone data is the calculation of atomic oxygen. And in a few minutes, I'll talk about how atomic oxygen's role, decides the amount of ozone that is formed at the MLT region at its secondary maxima. But before that, I want to talk about how I calculated atomic oxygen in my research. So this little snippet is an image from Dr. Smith's 2010 paper, where she has found a way of calculating atomic oxygen from ozone measurements. And she has used SABRE measurements for this. So basically in the upper mesosphere, these 4 equations decide ozone photochemistry. The first equation here basically talks about how ozone is formed, and the other 3 here talk about the destruction of ozone. During the daytime, since our discussion is limited to daytime measurements, we know that the first equation and the last equation occur so rapidly that the equations in between can be ignored. And taking into consideration these 2 equations and equating them here, we have a result for the daytime atomic oxygen, which was calculated by Dr. Smith in her paper. And here she has the VMRs for daytime and nighttime measurements from SABRE. The daytime measurements are these dashed lines, and the nighttime measurements is the line in bold. And this is a 7.6-year global average. Using this technique, this formula here, I have calculated the atomic oxygen observations from SOFI. If we look at these figures one by one, in the year 2009, we can see that after an SSW event, gradually the atomic oxygen moves down, and we can see that there is a strong descent in this particular region from days 20 to days 60. And eventually, after some time, the concentration goes back to its usual height. Similar is the case for 2010. The descent is not as evident as that for 2009, but it is still present. In 2011, we see a lot more stable atomic oxygen layer here. We don't see any significant descent. In 2012, much like 2010, we see a small amount or a significant amount of atomic oxygen, but nothing like 2009. In 2013, we again see a strong descent at day 20, which goes on until day 60 before, after which the atomic oxygen goes back to its usual climatological height, again indicating that 2009 and 2013 have been two very strong years for SSW and its impacts. This is a counter plot with, for comparing our observations with ACE. So using the technique that I used for SOFI for calculation of atomic oxygen, I have also used it for ACE measurements and calculated atomic oxygen. And as we can see in this contour plots, that the similar trend follows. By day 20, atomic oxygen starts to move downwards and goes on until day 60, after which it goes back to its usual climatological height. In the year 2010, we see a similar trend. In the year 2011, the atomic oxygen layer is much more stable. It doesn't show any significant descent. In 2012, we again see a little descent of atomic oxygen to lower altitudes. And in 2013, a very strong descent, just like that of 2009. Here is a quick look at SABRE measurements as well. So the contour plot of SABRE tells us that the year 2009 again showed a very strong descent of atomic oxygen, just like that of SOFI. Similar is the case for 2010, slightly less compared to 2009 and 2013, but still significant. 2011 is a strong year that just bolsters our study of SOFI atomic oxygen. And 2012, again, we see a descent event of atomic oxygen during these periods. And 2013, similar to that of SOFI measurements, we see that atomic oxygen has a descent to lower altitudes. So the next two slides are a summary with some cluster plots involved. So this is basically a summary of all the 5 years. And I just want to take a second to talk about how ozone is impacted by the concentration of atomic oxygen as well as temperature. So in every year, we see that the story starts with a reversal in the zonal mean zonal wind, after which we look at the temperature. For 2009, as we know, an elevation in the stratopause leads to a very cool mesospheric region, which is very helpful towards the production of ozone. And because the concentration of ozone depends on that of atomic oxygen, we can see that there is a strong descent of atomic oxygen to lower altitudes. Similar is the case for 2010, a wind reversal here, a comparatively less intense one, and a less intense elevation, a lesser descent of atomic oxygen, and lesser production of ozone compared to that of 2009. In 2011, there is no wind reversal. The temperature is stable. There is no elevation in the stratopause height. The descent of atomic oxygen is not as strong. And as a result, we see that the ozone layer is much more stable without any strong changes in concentration. And quickly summarizing the years 12 and 13 as well, they are very similar. Wind reversal followed by elevated stratopause, descent of atomic oxygen, strong formation of ozone, and eventually when the elevation goes back to its normal height, the concentration of ozone decreases and atomic oxygen returns to its usual climatological height. Similar is the case for 2013, just a little more intense and comparable to 2009. With this, I am moving on to the second part of my research, which is basically the study of NOx descent events. And here are some previous studies that I want to talk about before I move into my year of analysis. This first image here is Dr. Randall's plot, where she analyzes ACE observations. So the basic phenomena which happens after an SSW event is the descent of nitric oxide to lower altitudes. We can see here that in 2004, we don't have data for the first few days or the first I think 40 days, around 40 days. But we see that after mid-February, there is a gradual descent of nitric oxide to lower altitudes. Similar is the case for 2006 and that of 2009. We don't see this in other years like 2008, 2007, or 2005. And this is a plot from a very recent work of Dr. Bailey in 2014, where he has used SOFI observations to show a similar event in 2013, where we see that around a few days after the SSW event, we see a gradual descent of NO to low altitudes towards the stratosphere. And the concentration of NO is very high at higher altitudes. The concentration is comparatively lower at lower altitudes. However, there's a strong presence of NO at these altitudes. In contradiction to that, we can see here that for water, the concentration of water is very strong in this particular region between around 40 and 60 kilometers. But at higher altitudes, the concentration of water is very less. And just like water, the concentration of methane is also less at higher altitudes, but it is present in strong amounts at lower altitudes. So our story is basically based on the 2019 SSW event. And I have analyzed this year. And the plots here are for temperature and zonal mean zonal wind observations from SOFI. As we can see, in 2019, the plot over here is from the last 20 days of 2018 to the end of April in 2019. And as we can see here, the stratopause moves down and quickly goes up again, much above its usual climatological height, marking the beginning of an SSW event. There is a zonal mean wind reversal at 10 HPA. This is better seen in this last plot here. As we can see, at around the 2nd of January 2019, the value goes down from 0. It's negative around this region, around this point, which indicates that 2nd January was the date when the SSW event occurred in 2019. This is a look at multi-tracer analysis of 5 trace species calculated from SOFI observations. This is the 2019 measurement for nitric oxide. As we can see, there is a strong presence of nitric oxide at higher altitudes, which gradually moves downwards to lower altitudes. The presence is not very strong in terms of concentration when compared to higher altitudes. However, there is a strong presence at these altitudes, and it gradually moves towards stratospheric altitudes. Similarly, looking at water vapor, at water, we can see that the concentration of water, unlike nitric oxide, is low at higher altitudes, but is very strong between 45 and 60 kilometers. And methane follows the same pattern as that of water. Its concentration is much lesser than nitric oxide. In fact, it's very, very low at higher altitudes, and it is strongly present at lower altitudes. And as we saw in our ozone analysis, a very strong relationship between temperature and ozone is present. And as we can see in panel D here, that after the occurrence of the SSW event, the concentration of ozone is high initially, and it eventually decreases when the temperature, when the elevated stratopause goes back to its normal altitude and the temperature begins to rise in this region. And using the method described by Dr. Smith in her paper, I have calculated atomic oxygen here. And as we can see, that there is a strong descent event to lower altitudes after the occurrence of the SSW event on 2nd January. Here are some comparative measurements with ACE. Here is a SOFI ACE nitric oxide measurement in terms of VMR and the mean percent difference. The basic issue with this particular data set is the presence of PMC interference above 90 kilometers. However, below 90 kilometers and above 50 kilometers, we see that the agreement is quite good, where SOFI observations are consistently higher. And the agreement is, the difference is between around 0 to 50%, and above which this slowly starts to deteriorate and change because of the PMC. And to improve on this result, we have plotted the most latest data, which is in terms of number density. And here are published results from Dr. Herbig's 2019 paper, which validates the comparison between SOFI and ACE observations. And as we can see here that this data set basically has corrections made to it to remove the PMC interference. And as we can see that in our results, there is a good agreement with published results as well. And our result is only for the first 4 months of 2019, where SOFI measurements are consistently higher than that of ACE measurements, but with a very decent difference between 0 and 50%. The data set used by Dr. Herwig is between 2008 to 2016 with approximately 2,900 coincident points, which make his results a little more accurate, and the data set is also different. These are water measurements, again in VMR, and the percent difference. This is a validation from previously published result by Dr. Rong in 2010. And here the mean difference that we see at lower altitudes is between 0 to 20. And as we go higher, there is still good agreement. And at higher altitudes, the ACE measurements are higher than that of SOFI measurements, but they are always within minus 40 under 85 kilometers. And this agrees well with his results as well. But the measurements used in Dr. Rong's paper is the older version of the data, which is version 1.2. And the one that we use here is 1.3, which is the more updated version. Here is the methane validation. Again, looking at these previously published results from Dr. Rong's 2016 paper, we can see that there is he has two plots here. One is for December, January, February, and the other is March, April, May. And we have good agreement between both of these results. ACE measurements are consistently higher through all altitudes, and it is between 0 to 50% under 52 kilometers, after which this mean difference increases. That is because the values above this altitude, above 52 kilometers, are very small. So when when you subtract them from each other, the value tends to increase a lot, which leads to these erroneous or slightly unexpected high values. These are our ozone measurements, and we compare it to the published result of Dr. Smith from her 2013 paper. As we can see that ACE measurements are consistently higher through all altitudes except this little chunk where SOFI measurements are higher. And there is a very good agreement and relationship between both of these instruments measurements. Although this paper that was published by Dr. Smith basically compared everything to that of SABRE, which is the only paper that we have right now for comparison, we can see that the red line here, SOFI, and the orange line here, which is ACE, are in good agreement with the results that we have from our 2019 measurements. And also her paper used data worth almost 5 or 6 years, and the version was 1.2, but our measurements are from the latest data, which is 1.3. This is a quick look at the relationship between nitric oxide and ozone. It is a known fact that nitric oxide catalytically reacts with ozone at around 45 kilometers, which leads to the destruction of ozone at these altitudes. So I have 4 plots here. The first one is for 2009. Unfortunately, we don't have SOFI data available for ozone at 45 kilometers and below, so I don't have anything to compare it with here. In 2013, which was the other descent year, we can see that as nitric oxide descends downwards, during the same period between days 20 and 60, the concentration of ozone tends to decrease, and the concentration of ozone increases once again after nitric oxide returns back to its usual height. And this is for data below 45 kilometers. The year 2015 did not observe an NO descent event, and this is here just for comparison to see that in the absence of nitric oxide, the concentration of ozone tends to be very good and very stable. In 2019, again, we can see that the concentration of NO reaches to stratospheric altitudes, and because of that, the concentration below 45 kilometers of ozone is very poor. This is a time series to again study the relation between NO and O3 a little more deeply. The plot in dark blue is for 2004. It's an ACE measurement. Since SOFI measurements are available only after 2007, we've used ACE measurements for years before that. The year 2004 saw a very strong peak in NO concentration at around 45 kilometers. Both of these plots are specifically at 45 kilometers. This is nitric oxide at 45 kilometers, and we see a peak in its concentration between days 50 and 80. At the same time, we can see that the ozone concentration at 45 kilometers tends to go down very much. It's the dark blue line here. The next intense event with a good amount of nitric oxide reaching 45 kilometers was 2019, as we can see in this light blue color here. Comparing it with ozone, we can see that the ozone concentration during this period was very low, establishing a negative correlation between both of these species. The next event with a peak is 2006, which is red in the red colored line here. And as we can see that since this event is less strong in terms of the amount of NO that reached 45 kilometers compared to 2004 and 2019, the ozone concentration at 45 kilometers for 2006 is also more than the ozone that reached 45 kilometers in 2004 and in 2019. The green line here is 2015, which was a non-descent year. And this is only to compare that when the concentration of nitric oxide is very low or not present at that altitude, the concentration of ozone tends to be higher. And years 2013 and 2019, although they were descent years, the amount of nitric oxide that reached 45 kilometers was not very much, because of which there is a negative correlation, and we see that the ozone concentration at 45 kilometers marked by the magenta line here and the black line here are relatively more than that of 2019 and 2004. It is also a known fact that nitric oxide and water correlate negatively at around 55 kilometers. This is a plot that understands their correlation and dynamics at 55 kilometers. So the circles are basically SOFI measurements, and the plus signs are ACE measurements. So as we can see, red color is for 2009. The concentration of water vapor or water was very less at a certain value of nitric oxide at 55 kilometers. And at comparable values of nitric oxide in other years, we see that the concentration of water vapor was lowest in the year 2009, signifying this as a very intense event, followed by that of 2013. That is followed by 2006, followed by 2004, and finally we have the most recent event of 2019, which is the magenta one here. And the lowest measurement for water was in 2009, which was around 1.3 ppmv. And the highest value of the lowest water measurement was in 2019, which was around 3.4 ppmv. Here I have plotted the vertical transport rate that I calculated using NO, water, and methane observations. So basically for this science figure 34, the method that I used was I took 10 different equally spaced values of these three trace species. For NO, the value was between 0.1 and 1000 ppbv. For water, it was between 1 to 7 ppmv. And for methane, it was between 0.1 and 0.5 ppmv. And I calculated it for 40 days, distributing them in 4 10-day bins. And as we can see, this is the first 10 days starting from 2nd of January, which was our day of the occurrence of the SSW event. And as we can see here, red denotes nitric oxide. There is a gradual descent of nitric oxide, and we can see a small increase of the highest concentration here at around 77 kilometers. Dark blue is water, and we can see 2 bumps here. There's a peak at 74 kilometers and the other at 68 kilometers. And the cyan or the light blue shade here denotes methane. In the next 10 days, we see that the concentration of nitric oxide gradually goes downwards. There is a less significant peak. I wouldn't call it a very strong peak, but there's still a peak here at around 72 kilometers for nitric oxide. And then we see a peak for water at around 63 kilometers. And then the light blue here is again methane, which is descending downwards. And the third set of 10 days, we see that while NO is moving downwards, there is new NO being formed at higher altitudes. To verify this, I plotted the same 40 days in contour plots as well. And if we look at science figure 35, the topmost panel, we see that while NO is NO increases at higher altitudes, signifying that fresh NO is being produced. Unlike that of water and methane, where the same amount that has initially been formed gradually gets carried down to lower altitudes without any significant increase or production of these two species at higher altitudes. And the last 10 days, from day 32 to day 41, we can see that the concentration of NO again tends to go down. It was not very distinctly seen. Similar is the case for water and that of methane. We don't see any significant peaks, but they still tend to appear to be descending downwards gradually. So summary of both the ozone and the multi-tracer analysis is in this slide. This is basically like a short summary story of the research that I have been working on. The story starts with the occurrence of the SSW event, which is fundamentally marked by two different things. First, an elevated stratopause, and second, the reversal in the wind direction at 10 HPA. The elevated stratopause leads to a cool mesosphere, which is very ambient for the production of ozone. Gradually, when this goes, when the elevated stratopause comes back to its usual climatological height, the temperature is high at this particular region, which leads to a decrease in the ozone concentration, which again talks about the negative correlation between ozone and temperature. Using the method in Dr. Smith's paper, I calculated atomic oxygen again here to show the dependence between ozone and atomic oxygen and how atomic oxygen descends to lower altitudes after an SSW event and helps in the formation of ozone. The other part of the story is nitric oxide. And as we can see, after the occurrence of an SSW event, nitric oxide gradually descends to lower altitudes and around it is present around the stratosphere. And as a result, one of its two results is the decrease in ozone concentration at around 45 kilometers that can be seen here. If we look at this period between day 20 and day 60, we can see that nitric oxide is present at around 45 kilometers, which should be around this range. And that is the same time around which the concentration of ozone decreases. Very similar to this, at 55 kilometers, nitric oxide is not very good for the concentration of water. And as we can see that at 55 kilometers, which should tentatively be around this region between day 20 and day 60, we see that at the same time, the concentration of water tends to decrease significantly before and after which the concentration of water was very good in these altitude ranges. So with that, I have summarized my research, and I just want to quickly talk about a future research goal that I have in mind. We mostly talk about the Northern Hemisphere when we talk about major SSW events. The Southern Hemisphere is not very dynamic in comparison to the Northern Hemisphere, but it's definitely a good idea for research. So here I have two different plots. The top plot is the temperature plot for the Northern Hemisphere, and the bottom plot is that for the Southern Hemisphere. As we can see, they both behave very differently, and their appearance is also very different. In the Northern Hemisphere, we see that SSW is marked at the beginning of the year, where I'm hovering my cursor, while in the Southern Hemisphere, the SSW event occurred around 16th September, which is around this period. To validate this, I have used MERA observations in this figure here, figure number 37. And as we can see, that this was not a very strong event. The value of the zonal mean wind does not go down below 0. It's just below 20 here. It reverses direction, indicating the occurrence of a minor event. The only other event apart from 2019, a significant event that happened in the Southern Hemisphere, was 2002. I have again plotted the MERA observations for 2002 here. And as we can see, the zonal mean zonal wind observations go below 0, indicating this to be a strong event. It goes around minus 20 as well before it goes back to a positive value. And it can make for a very good research idea to compare the occurrences of 2019 and 2002 and understand the SSW and its impact on the Southern Hemisphere better. So that is something I have in mind as a future research goal. So that is all from my end for today's presentation. Thank you for listening to my talk. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a lot to take in there. But any questions from our folks that are online here?
Dr. Wadi, that was very well done. Just one curiosity about this last slide. You're not going to have SOFI for 2002, and even SABRE just barely makes that, right? It was launched in 2002. So could you say a little more about what you have in mind, since you'll have less data to work with?
Yeah, that was something I've thought about, and I think we have MERA observations for 2019 and 2002 both, and I could use SOFI observations for 2019 to validate the MERA observations for 2019, but the main comparison I have right now in mind is using MERA observations for 2002 and 2019.
Okay, yeah, because you're totally right. People have not done much at all on stratospheric warmings in the South. Right, so this would be a good contribution.
Are there other differences between the North and the South that that you might be able to? I mean, I like your idea, your research idea of making more comparisons. But I mean, what would you compare? I mean, is there something different? You know, how are they really different?
I haven't really delved deeper into this, but I would start off with comparing the different tree species and see how their dynamics evolve with time, how their response is to SSW events in terms of concentration, in terms of spatial and temporal variations, and through the months that they occur, something like that.
And do you have an idea of what difference in the dynamics of the atmosphere?
I'm sorry, could you please
Other than
repeat the
things
last
going around
part?
the other way? Sure. Do you have an idea in terms of the dynamics of the atmosphere? In terms of the sudden warming itself, how the southern stratosphere is really different from the northern stratosphere?
I am sorry, I haven't really looked into the South at all so far, but I'm really looking forward to doing that in the days ahead.
Well, in that case, I would suggest an interesting question would be, how is the southern, you know, how does the motion in the southern hemisphere, because it's all land, because of Antarctica, it's sort of, it's forced in a different way than the northern stratosphere. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, maybe I'll ask a naive question. The anti-correlations between things like NO and ozone, is that chemically driven? You know, is that a causative relationship between the species, or is it more of a accidental correlation?
I think it is a catalytic reaction that happens between NO and ozone at 45 kilometers. More of a chemical driven thing, I think.
Okay.
Mike, were you asking about water and nitric oxide or ozone and nitric oxide?
Well, I think more ozone and nitric oxide was the one that struck me. I think going back a slide or two, there were some very sharp lines in the plots. I can't see everything here. No, color plots. Let's see. There was a discussion here where you saw, I thought, the NO coming down, and there was an impact on, okay, yeah, maybe you can see it in the left-hand column, the lowest panel, and the right-hand column, the lowest panel. There's a difference in height coverage here, so I may be transposing things incorrectly, but I'm meant to associate that red protrusion that I see around day 40 in the left-hand plot with—
This one here?
Yeah. Am I looking at the right feature? Looking at
Yes.
that coming down and then something going away in the right-hand plot about the same time at that height?
Yes, sir. So my idea was basically that at around 45 kilometers, which should be around this period, when NO reaches 45 kilometers, the concentration of ozone at 45 kilometers starts to decrease, which is why I have focused ozone between this particular altitude range. So that is the negative correlation between these two species.
Why does the ozone increase then after, oh, well, I guess day 60?
So we can see that the concentration of nitric oxide tends to decrease in this particular region, which makes its catalytical destruction less, which is why the concentration here is more stable and there's more ozone here. It's not being destroyed as much as it was before.
Yeah, so it's been regenerated by sunlight and it's recovering?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'll ask maybe even a more naive question, or I kind of missed it in the beginning. What's the kind of latitudes that you're looking at?
It's between 65 and 85 degrees in the north.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Because yeah, I was trying to kind of, thinking on a super Darn angle, but this is much lower latitude and somewhat too of these years kind of spanning through, right? 2019 was more solar minimum, but 2013 and 2012 are, some of your solar max years. And but too, the timescales here are, really kind of correlated with any kind of solar storm type stuff. So that's kind of an interesting, I don't know, just null hypothesis there that it seems like it's not anything kind of related to those, but yeah.
Would you expect any differences if you could go to higher latitudes into the darkness? Right now, you're looking kind of long at Terminator because it's most of these data sets are solar occultation. So if you could go further into the polar winter, how would you expect things to be different?
So are you asking me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I got confused. I think, well, since SOFI observes just till around 85 degrees north, to assume that we won't have those 5 degrees of latitude towards the pole. As we go higher, I believe the concentrations of NO should be more strongly present, or we can observe it in a more strong capacity, because I believe the event takes place in the pole or at those altitudes. So the polar region should be the region which leads to a stronger concentration of NO. That's what I think.
Yeah, I definitely think it'd be more NO. But the 85 degrees that Sophie observes, that's an equinox thing, right? You need the Terminator to go to the pole. Earlier in the year, it'll be a lower latitude. Anyway, great talk. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Any other last questions here? Going once, going twice. Not hearing anything. So thank you very much again, Saswati. Thank you very much for this. And two, for those that are on or maybe watching afterwards, again, this is concludes our, this is our last day of the semester here in the spring. And so this is our last Space at VT seminar. And we'll be kind of evaluating the seminar so far by the students and figuring out awards for the best in space science and space engineering here in the coming weeks. So thanks everybody for joining us today and joining us online. And we'll look forward to starting this back up again. Yeah, I'm not going to end. I see you raising your hand. I was looking forward to us starting this back up again as with the fall semester. But go ahead there.
I want to quickly thank everyone for being present here today. And if anyone has any questions about my work in the future, please feel free to send me an email. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. So again, thank you very much.
Yeah,
And
thank you for that talk. Appreciated it.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Shashwati. And I just real quick want to thank all the speakers all this year, especially the students. I think this is a cool thing, and I hope next year we can do it and also do it in person. And also want to thank Kevin for organizing all this and keeping it going. Kevin, you did a great job, and all of us at Space at VT really appreciate that.
yeah, no problem. Thank you. Thank you for that. So no,
Thank you, Kevin.
yeah, no problem. So I'm glad everybody, I say thank you for all the participants as well. It's a great selection and shows the kind of really diverse kind of areas that we have here in Space at VT about all the different kind of research that we do. And so looking forward to next year and learning more on lots more areas and things like that. So, but for today, I'll conclude this for now. And thank you very much for everybody for joining us, and stay tuned in the fall, and we'll see you then.
In the fall with cookies.
Or donuts.
Donuts, right?
Yes, great idea.